Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be for you. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important aspects when you are brewing a coffee at home, and that is the bloom. And if you don't know what the bloom is, that is A-OK. We will be talking about it right after this. It is so great to see all of you. I hope you're all doing so well on this beautiful day. If you didn't see my last video, which was 5 quick tips in 90 seconds to help you make a better coffee, I would highly recommend that. It will automatically improve your coffee game. I guarantee it, no matter if you are a beginner, intermediate, expert. I'm sure there is some tip that you've either forgotten about or never heard of, and it'll help your coffee game, I promise. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we are talking about the bloom. And you might be thinking, now Josh, what is a bloom? It sounds like some weird flower or an old piece of garment or, I don't know, it doesn't sound like a normal thing. You're right. When I first learned coffee many years ago, I did training at Klatch Coffee in Rancho Cucamonga, and it was the first time I really heard about coffee and all the different pieces of coffee and the science behind coffee. And I remember them talking about bloom, and I was like, how in the world can there be this much that impacts 1 cup of coffee? And the more I, brewed coffee and learned about coffee, the more it totally made sense to me. So, if you've never heard of the bloom, basically, a bloom of coffee is when you are brewing a cup of coffee, maybe it's in a Chemex or an AeroPress or Hario or whatever it may be, but is that first pour you do, usually about 50 to 60 grams of water over the top of your beans. And what that does is it pre-wets all of the beans evenly, well, all of the ground coffee evenly, and then what it does is it releases excess CO2. So if you don't know this, when you roast coffee, you're losing like some of the water content, and then you're actually gaining carbon dioxide into those beans so that when you grind them, it releases, carbon dioxide. So basically, the fresher your beans are, the more carbon dioxide there is. So basically there's this window of like when you should brew coffee, and you should wait a few days after the roast. A lot of people do like a week or so to like usually have like a month till they really start to get stale and you really start to notice the difference. But the fresher the beans are, the more carbon dioxide there is in those beans. And what you don't want is all that carbon dioxide running down into your coffee. If you've ever had just a regular sparkling water before, you'll know that that is a very bitter taste. It's not refreshing, it's not good. It's the reason why a lot of sodas have, a lot of sugar and sweeteners and flavoring in them, because plain sparkling water is honestly not the best. That carbon dioxide in and of itself is bitter. So you're trying to release that carbon dioxide, but you don't want to over-release, because that carbon dioxide in that initial pour also has all the aromatics and a lot of the smell and the flavors that are in the coffee. So if you let it just sit there, like if you pour that 50 grams, let it sit there for like 2 minutes, you're gonna get a cup of coffee at the end that, might still taste good, but you're not gonna have those beautiful notes to it that just make it delicious. So what you wanna do is do that first, 50 to 60 grams, let it sit for about 30 seconds, let it, bubble it up, you'll see it bubbling, and then you continue on with the rest of your brewing, no matter what method you're using. Personally, if I'm making coffee at home, I try to bloom a Chemex, AeroPress even. I know that a lot of people don't even do an AeroPress, but I personally think it's great. But if you are making a pour over especially, the bloom is incredibly important. It will help give you a more balanced cup, give you better flavors. It will take out some of those CO2 flavors, just that bitterness, which we do not want in our coffee. And overall, it gives you a better cup of coffee. So the other reason why it's called the bloom is because a lot of times you'll notice that it'll kind of rise up after that first 50 grams. When you start the next pour, you'll see it kind of rise up a little bit. You'll also see it bubbling while the bloom is actually happening. And that is because of the CO2 that is being released. And that's kind of where the name comes from, which is, I don't know, I find it interesting. Now, besides all the benefits you get from, the extraction being more even and releasing the CO2 and all that stuff, one of my favorite parts about the bloom is you really get the smell of the coffee. You can hear, you can smell what the coffee is supposed to be like. Maybe it's a little bit darker and you're getting some really nice chocolatey and earthy notes to it. Maybe it's a little bit lighter and it's a geisha and you're getting some amazing like citrusy and fruity notes to that scent. it really shows you, what you should be getting from that coffee. And honestly, it's, when people talk about waking up to the smell of coffee, that's great, love it. But when you can take that smell and have it not be an automatic machine and a pour over is your first smell, honestly, I would wake up to that smell every morning and it would get me out of bed so flippin' fast. But I have to make my own. So if you are sitting at home and kind of wondering, okay, so you're talking about the bloom, is it really that important? It just sounds like an extra step that's wasting time. I've got things to do, I've got places to be. Actually, you probably don't have anywhere to be, but you might have things to do. And you're like, is it really worth that extra 30, 40 seconds? Yes, and if you don't believe me, try this. Take 2 brewers, or 1, and just brew 2 cups of coffee. Take 1 and brew it like you normally would. So, bloom the first part and then continue the other one. On the second one, don't bloom. Just pour your first 150 grams and then continue normally as you would at 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, however you brew. Taste those 2 cups side by side. As long as you haven't changed any other variables like the beans you're using or the grind size or anything like that, you should be able to taste the difference. And if you really want to taste the difference, bloom your coffee, take a coffee you have and just, give it a good 150 grams and let it just kind of strain for about a minute and give that a taste. You will taste some really weird flavors and I promise you it will not taste good. It just won't, but you'll really see the importance of the bloom. So if you have time, I would highly recommend doing this. It's a really cool way to test the, bloom and what it actually does for your cup of coffee. Now granted, if you're using a coffee that's a little bit older, maybe it's 3 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks out, you probably won't actually see that much difference in the 2 cups because a lot of that CO2 has been released. But what you might notice is it's not as bitter because a lot of the CO2 is gone, but you will notice some difference in the notes, the flavor notes, because a lot of those beautiful flavors have been released because it's getting a little bit older. But yeah, this is honestly a really easy way for you to see what the bloom does to the coffee that you use every morning, or maybe a new coffee even, and just seeing how important this step is, because it truly is one of the most important things you can do to just better your everyday coffee. I would highly recommend it. Now, I will end with this, and this is a little important. So basically, the bloom, it takes a little bit to get used to because pouring 50 grams of hot water is a little tricky. It takes some finessing. So you might need to practice a little bit. You might not get it perfectly the first time. You might accidentally pour 60 or 70. That's fine. Don't get frustrated. Just know that you're on the way there. You will get there. It will be all right. And you will be making better coffee no matter what. But yeah, that is what I got for you guys today on the bloom of your pour over coffee or your brewed coffee. Again, super, super important. I cannot emphasize this enough. You really should be blooming your pour over coffee. It will help you. I promise you. It will make a better cup of coffee in the morning. And let's be honest, when we wake up in the morning, we want the best cup of coffee we can possibly get. We don't want no garbage cup of coffee. You are here because you want a better cup of coffee. And this is a great way. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a comment, share this video with someone if it helped you out. Thank you so much to everyone that watched the one on ice pour overs and used the recipe. It was awesome to see all of your guys' responses. Make sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like button, ring that notification bell if you haven't yet, so you will be notified every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when there's a new video. And yeah, go drink some really good coffee. Make sure you bloom it. And if you do, tag me on Instagram @CaffeinatedConsultant. All right, catch you all on Friday. Bye.